Tonight's class is taught by Avery Lewis. To go ahead and skip ahead to that class, check the screen for the time marker at which you can skip ahead to Avery's class. To hear the intro to my channel, a little bit more about my process of teaching, and get connected in different ways, continue listening, and then Avery's class will start right after. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and we look forward to connecting with you. Hi, my name is Kim, and welcome to my channel. You may have found yourself here when you were looking for yoga, yin yoga, anxiety relief, relaxation, something to do with Brene Brown that'll help your day feel better, or maybe you somehow stumbled here through a picture of a cute animal, or we know each other offline. However you made it here, welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. If you are joining me for a yoga class, go ahead and find yourself somewhere you can lie on the floor for about an hour to an hour and a half. And yes, I genuinely mean just somewhere you can lie on the floor. Yin yoga is a practice that can be done on a yoga mat, but can also just be done lying in the middle of your bedroom floor, your living room floor, or wherever you find yourself. We'll be moving through about a dozen or so different poses that might feel like they are simple at first, but the purpose of yin yoga is to find a way to use our breath and our self-willpower to sit in the same position for 3 to 5 or maybe even 7 minutes. And while that sounds simple at first and maybe not like what anything you ever thought yoga could be is, over time, we work to ride the edge and the waves of sensation. We never want to push ourselves to a sense of pain, and so if you ever find yourself in pain, please move in a way that feels better for you. But we want to ride the waves of sensation so that we can use the ability to take a deeper inhale, to take a longer exhale, to sit with things that feel new or uncomfortable. Because off the mat or off the floor or outside of this moment that you find yourself in, there can be a lot of things that are hard to deal with, a lot of things that are hard to sit with, and a lot of things that you are trying to push away or avoid or take a break from. And it's not a problem to take a break. But when we find ourselves unable to take a pause and just be with ourselves for 5 minutes, we maybe need to take more breaks for ourselves. So think of this time, whether you participate in the movement or not, as a time for you to take a break, to take a pause, and just to give back to yourself. You probably spend hours and hours each day giving your time to someone else in the interest of hopefully something you enjoy. But take this time for you to sit, to lie, to be, and to breathe. Thank you, and I'll see you on the mat.
This class it's kind of, well, it's evolving as classes do. When I started teaching it, Kim and I were sharing the class time on Wednesdays, and that was in like September, October we started, right? And it was sort of, for me, born out of this like realization of how dissociated I had become from my body over the course of the pandemic, and really feeling like I needed to inhabit my body again, and sort of recognizing that dissociation as a really effective strategy for dealing with how the collective trauma of the pandemic, but that it was not doing me a service anymore, that it was actually like inhibiting my lifestyle. So for me, the class started this way as a way to just like get back into my body. And it started morphing a little bit into this consideration of how sort of systemic oppression is alive in our bodies and manifests in our bodies in different ways. And so we've explored a little bit sort of different facets of white supremacy culture and how they show up in our experience, our lived experience in a human body. One of them we talked about was perfectionism. You and I were just talking about that a little bit ago, and this sort of sense of urgency and perfectionism and individualism that is so ingrained in our culture, and finding ways to kind of identify when that's coming up in our body and resist it. So we explored those things for a little while. We've talked about sort of seasonal shifts. In the last few classes we've talked a lot about grief and holding the grief of the last couple of years and the grief of normal life experiences in combination with all of this that we've been managing in the last almost 2 years now. So as I was like thinking about that today, and I sort of just take this wherever my brain and my life are moving me. So I was thinking about resilience, and that word became such a buzzword in the last 2 years. It's like I hear it everywhere, especially if you're studying trauma. You hear the term resilience all the time. And I was realizing that I have a very like cognitive understanding of what resilience is. Like, oh yeah, it's like a response to a hardship. It's our ability to like rebound and bounce back from hardship and challenges in life. But that I don't feel like I have a very like somatic understanding of resilience. I don't have this like embodied. I haven't had the time or the space to really figure out what that resilience actually feels like in my body. It's one thing to talk about it and write about it and think about it, but it's a different thing to feel it. So I was thinking about that the end of last week, and then this weekend I was listening to a recorded workshop of an astrologer that I like actually, but astrology aside, she did this cool meditation, sort of somatic or body-based meditation on resilience. And I was like, oh, and it was the first time I'd had the opportunity to really feel what resilience feels like what it actually feels like inside a body. So I thought I'd try to replicate that for us as a starting point for practice today and see what you think, and then we can just bring that as like a thread through the rest of the movements that we do. So if you're willing to experiment with me a little bit, I'm just going to have you, don't change anything about how you're sitting right now, but just notice the way you're sitting. So try not to adjust, and notice your pelvis, and if you have weight sort of in the front of your pelvis or the back of your pelvis or the left or right side, you're just noticing where it is. And then notice how your spine starts to grow out of the pelvis, and see if you can visualize the curvature of your spine without changing it, all the way up through your upper back and your neck and into your head. And now imagine that you have a 50-pound weight on top of your head, and let the feeling of that weight move all the way down through your body, through your pelvis, into the ground. And then imagine you have another 50-pound weight on top of that. And with that imagination, can you tell where the breaking points would be if you kept piling weight on? Where might there be a snap? And then this is the key part. Resist the weight and push back up into it. And so to resist it, you have to push up and root down simultaneously. And it's that feeling of pushing back, of bouncing back. That's the resilience right there. That's the feeling of resilience. Of holding your space and holding your own. And so I want to add onto this something else I've been playing with, which is feeling into that, the resilience of pushing back and grounding down simultaneously. And then being soft enough that you can breathe still. So you can still breathe into the front of your body and the back of your body and both sides. And I add this piece about the breath because I think if resilience is going to be something that we have that sustains, something that continues, and that is readily available to us, it has to work with the breath. You have to be able to breathe in the midst of being resilient. So if you can, just place a little like somatic bookmark here. And we'll keep returning to this feeling, whatever you're feeling in your body right now, as you imagine resilience, as you imagine resisting and pushing back into whatever weights you're carrying. We'll just remember this so that we can return to it as a reference point as we explore it in other shapes, and perhaps as you explore this in other parts of your life. Okay. So we're going to start on our backs tonight. We're going to find some movement. And you don't need anything just yet. You can press your props aside. You might want to have blocks up towards the top of your mat for later. And as you come down to your back, you can take the bottoms of your feet to the floor. And start to bring your attention into the body. And feel for the rhythm of your breath as it exists in this moment. You don't have to make any major changes to it. Just noticing and orienting. And then we're going to start to find just some pretty gentle movement down here that we'll let grow throughout the practice as we finally come to some standing poses. But for now, let's start really simple and just reach your right foot up towards the ceiling. If you want to, you can use your arms and wrap them around the back of the right thigh just for a little support. And I'm just going to have you kind of play around with your foot. Yeah, you can point and flex the foot. Maybe some ankle rolls, kind of kneading the air through the toes. And then find a flexed foot so that the toes are drawing down towards your face. If your arms aren't wrapped around the leg, go ahead and find them now there. And we're just going to do a few pulses. So on your exhale, you can bring the heel down towards your butt. And then inhale, reach your foot back up towards the ceiling. And just do that a few times at your own pace. Exhaling down, inhaling to lift. Good. Okay, now we're going to take the right ankle and cross it over the left thigh. And you can just pause for a breath there. Try to take a nice deep breath into your low belly, especially around the right side. And then if you want to, you can bring this whole structure in towards your chest by wrapping your arms around the left thigh and drawing that in. This is pretty early in the practice for a big hip opener, so just be easy on yourself. Okay, and then you can return the left foot to the floor. Keep your legs crossed as they are. And then let this whole structure, this whole figure four structure, dip over to the left. Yeah. Just a couple deep breaths there. It might feel good to reach your right arm back behind you so that you're long from your right fingertips all the way down to the right hip crease. carefully bring this structure back through center. And then re-extend your right foot up towards the ceiling. And try to get really strong through the right leg. So you're flexing the foot, pressing the heel forward. And I'm going to have you keep pressing the heel forward as you start to slowly lower that leg down towards the ground, all the way till it touches the floor. Yep, nice and slow. Good job. And when it reaches the floor, you can pause and soften. And then just feel the asymmetry of the shape. One leg long, one leg bent. Okay, and then gently you can bring your right foot to the floor, and we're going to take that on the other side. So you can reach your left leg up towards the ceiling. And just finding some movement through the foot and ankle to start. You can point and flex the foot. Okay, and then we're going to take those little pulses. When you're ready, you can wrap your arms around the left leg and exhale to bend the knee, drawing the heel down. And then inhale to reach it back up. And take that a few times at your own pace. And then when you feel ready, you can cross your left ankle over your right thigh, coming into that figure 4 shape. Maybe just finding a couple breaths here. And then if it feels good, you can draw this structure in towards your chest, wrapping your arms around the right leg. Okay, and then you can let this whole structure start to move towards the right, so gently twisting to your right. And then maybe you lift your left arm behind you so that you're long between your left fingers and your left hip crease. Good, and then carefully let's bring this structure back through center. We're going to extend the left leg up towards the ceiling. And then getting really strong through the left leg, flexing the left foot. Okay, we're going to keep pressing through the left heel as you slowly start to lower that leg down towards the ground. Slowly, slowly. And when it reaches the floor, just pause there. And again, feeling into the asymmetry. Good, and then you can bring both feet to the floor. And we're going to heel toe the feet out so they're about as wide as the mat. And just gently let your knees fall in towards each other. So you feel the inner knees touching. So this inward rotation of your thigh bones. Notice if that brings any sensation to where your thighs connect to your pelvis. Nice easy breath. And then if you want to from here, you can start to windshield wiper the legs. So letting both knees fall to one side and then to the other. This movement might be pretty small, or you might be letting the knees come all the way over, maybe even reaching arms back behind you. Feeling for the sort of full stretch between fingers and the corresponding knee. Good. So I'm going to invite you to take your time with this transition. If there's anything else you want to explore here on your back, you can do that now. We're going to meet in a child's pose when you're ready. It might feel good to rock and roll a few times before you get there. So as you're settling into child's pose, give yourself whatever supports you need. You can come into any version of this pose that feels good for you right now. And just take a moment here to assess your energy level, your capacity for movement and engagement right now. And know that there's no right answer for that. You don't have to have a certain level of energy or a certain level of attention to be here tonight. This posture is always available to you if you want to come into a restful shape. You're also welcome to return to lying on your back at any point in the practice. If you feel ready to move forward, you can start to grip the mat with your fingers and bring yourself up to a tabletop. And we're just going to move through some nice, easy cat-cow shapes. So when you feel ready, you can inhale and lift your head, lift your tailbone, let your collarbones widen. And then as you exhale, push into the hands, let your spine round. And just take that at your own pace. You might be thinking about the flexibility of your spine as you do this. You might be appreciating that, noticing that. And know that it's this finding flexibility in the spine is one way that we can help messages move between the brain and the body. So giving a little attention to this core piece of us. You might notice the way that it moves in relation to your pelvis, in relation to your head, neck, and shoulders. That there are relationships there, that they impact each other. And then from here, we're going to come down onto our bellies. So you can walk your hands forward when you're ready and gently lower down. And we're going to take a few cobra shapes, but we're going to bring our arms a little bit wider than we might normally. So you can bring them out a little wider than your mat, either palms against the ground or making kind of spiders with your fingers. And then we're going to inhale as you lift through your face, your neck, your heart. Push down through the tops of your feet, and then lower down your heart, your throat, your face. And do that 2 more times at your own pace. And when you're finished with that, you can bring your hands back underneath your shoulders and press back to a tabletop. And then you can either push into downward facing dog or back to a child's pose, whatever you feel like you need tonight. If you're taking down dog, you can let it be a little bit fluid. You might pedal out the feet a little bit. You can think of this as kind of an exploratory posture rather than anything static or anything that needs to look a specific way. And then we're just going to find some slow shifts between down dog and plank pose. So as you're ready, you can lift your heels and slowly shift forward to plank. feel free to lower your knees if you want to be a little easier on your body. And then on your exhale, shift back, downward facing dog. And just take a full round of breath there. Inhale and exhale. And then we'll do that again. Inhale as you shift forward, nice and slow. And then exhale, slowly shift back. And do that one more time on your own. Okay, and then we're going to start to connect the dots. So once you get back to down dog, you can pause there for just a moment. And then we're going to inhale, shift forward to plank pose. Exhale, gently lower to your belly. Press the tops of the feet down as you lift your face, throat, and heart. Exhale, lower heart, throat, and face. And then engage your belly as you press back to tabletop. And then downward facing dog. Okay. So we're going to make our way to the top of the mat. You can bend your knees and take lots of little baby steps forward. As you're getting to the top of your mat, find your blocks and bring them under your hands. So you've got a little support here. And I'm going to have you take a pretty generous bend in the knees. So it's almost like you're in a, I would even say almost like chair pose. So like pretty deep. And then as you're bending the knees, reach your tailbone back and the crown of your head forward. And then think about having a little bit of that cobra shape through your chest. So you're shining your heart forward. And so we'll take an inhale there. And then exhale as you gently fold. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhale as you reach up. Exhale and fold. And then last time, inhale to lift. And exhale to fold. And then feel the floor through your feet and start to push down and slowly uncurl up to standing. You can kind of walk your hands up your legs if you want a little extra support there. And then just taking a moment to reorient yourself to this new relationship to the room. You can keep your eyes open for a moment and actually look around the room. You might turn, look behind you. Notice the windows and the lights, the ceiling and the floor. And coming back through center, we're going to take a couple side stretches. You can push down through your feet. Inhale, reach your arms up overhead. Let's grab the left wrist with the right hand and then take a big tilt towards your right. So you're pressing down through the left foot. And then we'll inhale to come back through center. Switch the grip of your hands. Exhale to the other side. Press down through your right foot. And then inhale back through center. And as you exhale, let's come to a chair pose. So you can bend the knees, send your seat back. We're going to be playing around with variations of this shape throughout the class tonight. So I'm going to give some arm options. If it doesn't feel good to have the arms overhead, you can just reach them straight forward. I like to actually turn the palms up towards the ceiling there. It gets a nice outward rotation through the arms. Or you can bring fingertips to your shoulders. That's another option. So just going to pause here for a moment. Sit down through your sit bones. Feel your feet against the floor. And then remembering that exercise we did at the beginning of class where we imagined that we had a weight on our head. I'm going to have you push into that weight. Stay in your seat, but push into the weight and feel your spine lengthen. Feel your neck lengthen. And then keep pushing into the weight as you push into your feet and come all the way up to stand. Good. Okay, let's sit back down one more time and do that once more. So letting yourself settle in, seat back. First, staying in your seat, pressing your head into the weight, lengthen through your neck. And then nice and slow, pushing into your feet and rise all the way up. And let's exhale, take a forward fold, arms out wide. Let your hands find those blocks if you wish, and we'll inhale, halfway lift. And exhale, fold. Good. Okay, so we're going to step back to warrior one. Let's step the right foot back first. So the feet will be kind of like on train tracks here. There will be a little bit of space between the two of them. And then the back foot's at about a 45-degree angle, front knees coming over the front ankle. And then we'll inhale as we lift our arms. So feel into the asymmetry of this shape. We were in something a little bit similar to this when we were on our backs. Okay, so we're going to take this into a little bit of a balance. I'm going to have you start to shift forward. If you feel like you want to come all the way into warrior three, you can do that, reaching your arms forward and kicking that leg back. You can also just experiment with letting the back toes float. So you might not be totally parallel to the ground here, but you're really just experimenting with having weight in one leg. Notice the wobbles, and notice that's proprioception. It's your body like figuring out where it is in space. Good, and then we're going to sit back down into our chair from there, so you can bend that standing leg. Let your right foot find the ground. And then tapping into that sense of resilience, start to press your head and arms into that imaginary weight and rise all the way up. And exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale and fold. And let's find that on the other side. So you can step your left foot back this time, coming to warrior one. Again, just taking a moment to appreciate the asymmetry. That left and right side can be doing different things. Good. And then to play with our balance here, part of resilience is being able to balance, right? Being able to juggle. So let's start to shift some weight into the standing leg, the front leg, and either just let the back toes kind of float, or maybe you actually hinge forward a bit and you start to find more of a warrior three shape. And again, think of this as just exploration. It doesn't have to actually look like the warrior three or anything you've ever even seen in yoga. This is just about playing with balance. Cool, good. And then let's sit down into our chair. You can bend both of your knees. Both feet find the floor. Okay, and then pushing into that resilience once more, we'll start to rise up to stand. Feet press down, arms lift. And then exhale, hinge at your hips and fold. Inhaling, halfway lift. And exhale to fold. Okay, so I'm going to take us back to that chair pose one last time. Actually, second to last time. Okay, this is not a yoga pose. This was just an experimentation I was playing with over the weekend. I was thinking about ways that our hips rotate. So we were just in this warrior three where hips were facing forward. And now I want us to experiment with opening. So I'm going to have you think of your right foot as your floating foot here. You're going to be grounding into your left leg. Arms can be anywhere. You might take them to your hips just to sort of see how they're moving. And we're just going to kind of bounce and float that foot back behind us. So hips close and round forward as the legs come together, and then they bounce and open. Yeah. And see if you can find, like there's some buoyancy in that floating leg. I'm noticing that everything's kind of wobbling too. So we're being okay with the wobbles. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna try that on the other side. So we're gonna bring some weight then into your right foot. Let your left foot be the floater. Maybe hands are at your hips, or maybe they're just floating around in space. And we're gonna start to bounce that direction. So moving from sort of closed, squared hips to open hips. We're just seeing what's possible. Good. This is gonna make sense in a little bit, I promise. Okay. So let's go ahead and turn to this side of the room, turn to your right, and take your feet nice and wide. We're gonna come into Warrior Two. So you can turn your front toes towards the front of the room and bend into that knee. Good. Great, and then the arms can outstretch towards the horizons. So finding sort of that open hip shape here. You're really open actually in this. And then leaning on some more familiar yoga poses here, let's come to reverse warrior. So you can let your back arm drop, front arm lifts. Feel the space between your front fingers and your front hip crease. Good, and then push into your front foot and lengthen your front leg. And we're going to start to hinge forward towards triangle pose. So you can reach forward with that front hand. Let it come down to your front shin or thigh. The other arm's going to reach up towards the ceiling. Probably feel some rotation through your torso. See if you can find the length in your neck here as if your head's pressing into that imaginary weight. Yeah. Good, and then start to reach your fingertips up towards the ceiling to bring yourself out of that posture. Bend back into your front knee. And then I'm going to have you heel toe the back foot in a little bit. So you're shortening your stance. Good, and here we're just going to play around with coming to half moon pose. Just like before, think of this as like a playful playing with balance. So as you start to shift forward, your back leg's going to float away from the ground. So this is similar to where you just were. Maybe your front hand is reaching down towards a block. Maybe it's just kind of hanging out in the air like mine is. Maybe you're coming into a more structured pose like Kim has. Maybe the other arm is reaching up towards the ceiling. Yeah, good. That's awesome. Cool. Okay, so we're going to let the back toes find the floor again. Gently settling back towards your Warrior Two. And then let's push into the front foot, lengthen that leg, and take both feet to parallel each other. Pause here in the symmetry of this shape. And just feel that you have both of your legs coming straight out of your body. Your spine rising up tall through your center. You can stay here if you'd like, or if you want to come into a forward fold, you can take your hands to your low back and then inhale, lift your chest. And exhale, fold forward. Maybe your hands come down to the ground. Okay, and then let's take the hands to your hips. Take a little bend in your knees, and then push in your feet to rise back up. Good. Okay, let's take Warrior Two on the other side. So you can turn your back toes towards the back of the room and bend into that knee. Find a nice long wingspan through your arms. Relax through your jaw, through your eyebrows, your forehead. And we'll take reverse warrior from here, so you can let your back arm drop, front arm lift. And from here, we'll push into the front foot, lengthen that leg, and start to make our way towards triangle pose. So as you hinge forward, reach that front arm forward, 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 and then maybe it comes down to your shin or your thigh. Other arm up towards the ceiling. Feeling the rotation of ribs and lungs around your heart. And then using that floating arm to reach back up towards the ceiling, that'll carry you back to warrior two. Okay, and then just as before, we're going to start to heel toe the back foot in. So our left foot this time. And we're just going to play around with this balance. Yeah, you might use a block. I've been finding that as I play, it's easier just to let things float around. But so this is really similar, right? It's sort of the opposite direction. We were doing this opening this way, and now we're finding this closing action as you start to shift your weight forward. The back leg's finding a little bit of buoyancy and lightness. Front arm comes down towards a block, or maybe it's just reaching down towards the ground. Other arms perhaps overhead. Nice. Good. And then we're going to be very gentle as we let that floating leg find the floor. Heel toeing back to warrior two. And then we'll push into the front foot, lengthen that leg, take both feet parallel to each other. Feeling into the symmetry here, pressing both feet down. Feel the pinky toe side of your foot pressing down. And then maybe you stay here, or maybe you take your hands to clasp this time at the base of your spine. And then as you inhale, you'll reach your fist down, lift your heart up. And then exhale, hinge at your hips as you fold forward. Maybe your arms come overhead, or maybe they stay pressed against the spine. Okay, and then you can release your hands down to your low back, and then to your hips. Take a little bend in your knees, push into your feet to rise back up. Okay, then let's just heel toe the feet together. Come to Tadasana, facing the side of the room just for a moment. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or just soften your gaze. Arms can hang down by your sides. Feel into your toes, into the bottoms of your feet, to your ankles. You might imagine inhabiting your feet as if you were sort of putting your feet on like socks. You could actually step into each foot. Okay, and then let's take a quarter turn to the front of the room and step back up towards the top of your mat. We'll take a nice big inhale there as you reach your arms out and up. And then hinging at your hips, let's fold forward. You can take a bend in your knees as you do this. And then inhale for that halfway lift, nice long spine. And exhale to fold. Good. Plant your hands and let's step back to downward facing dog or child's pose. If it would feel good for you to move through a vinyasa, you're welcome to do that here. Okay, so I'd like to get an opportunity to stretch out the hips a little bit more. Let's come to pigeon pose next. You can reach your right foot up towards the ceiling. And then we're going to bend the knee as you bring the right foot in towards your right wrist. And we're going to start to settle the pelvis behind the right leg. I'm going to use a block to prop up my right hip. You might use a prop of some sort, maybe a bolster or blanket, or if it feels better to let the hip hang, you can do that too. And then as it feels comfortable for you, you can start to lower your torso down. So letting your arms support you. Maybe you bend and rest into your forearms. Maybe you use a second block to hold your head. And take maybe like 7 to 10 deep breaths here. And see if you can just follow the trail of your breath, every breath, the inhale and the exhale. And starting to let yourself just really soften into the shape as we approach the more restorative part of our practice. You might find that after several breaths, there's a little bit more space. You might be wiggling a bit to allow for more room through the hips. And start to gently rise out of this posture so we can find it on the other side. So you can bring your hands under your shoulders and carefully lift your torso. This works a little bit differently for everybody. If you've got a prop under your right hip, you can remove it. And then you might tuck the back toes under, lift the back knee, and lift yourself back to a tabletop or down dog. Make any movements that you need to make. If you want to find another vinyasa, you can. If you want to just wiggle the hips side to side or take a child's pose for a couple breaths, you can do that too. And when you're ready to find it on the other side, you can lift your left leg and then bend the knees. You swoop it in, bring it towards the left wrist. Set yourself up with some props. And if and when it's available to you and you want to let the torso melt forward, you can do that, maybe letting your weight rest into your forearms, or letting the forehead rest on a block or bolster. If your mind has started to wander, you can try bringing it back to the experience of your breath. letting your breath tether you into your body and into the moment. And then we're going to start to carefully lift our bodies out of this shape. So you can bring your hands underneath your shoulders. Gently lift your torso. Remove the props from beneath you. And then tucking the back toes under and lifting the back knee. You can start to make your way back to tabletop, child's pose, or down dog. Your response to that posture might be very different than the people around you, so just move in the ways that feel good for you. And when you feel ready, you can come to take a seat. Give yourself some kind of support in the seat, either bolster or blanket, or you can kneel and let your sit bones rest on blocks. We'll have time for just this. I like to have a little bit of a meditation or recentering before we move into the really sort of supported restorative postures. So as you're finding this seat, you can just let your pelvis start to anchor into whatever it's making contact with. And see if you can tap back into that sensation of resilience, wherever you placed that somatic bookmark. When I experience that sensation of resilience, when I've done that practice on my own, it feels very similar to me to the experience of dignity. When I think of dignity and where dignity exists in my body, it feels like it lives in the same place. It's in this sort of lengthening of the spine, this slight broadening through the heart, a softness in the shoulders, and space for breath. It feels beautiful to me that resilience and dignity have such similar somatic experiences. And I think if we can practice becoming familiar with what resilience and dignity feel like inside of our body, we can start to advocate for it for other bodies. And as we're sitting here in this moment of contemplation, reflection, before we settle into this really sort of passive, integrative part of the practice, I'll invite you to just sit with whatever thoughts or emotions may have come up during the movement part of our practice. If it's possible that you felt, silly or urgency or perfectionism showing up, and just noticing if it was there, trying to notice without judgment. If you feel called to, you can place a hand on your heart, or maybe both hands against your heart here. And we'll just spend a minute or so allowing yourself time and space to be with whatever is there, whatever's arising. Thoughts, emotions. And if nothing's coming to mind, it's okay to be with nothing too. If your hands are at your heart, you can lower them back down to your legs. Let your shoulders and elbows and forearms and wrists be heavy. When you feel ready, you can start to open your eyes, let your attention come back into the room. And we'll set up for our first restorative posture. We have 4 postures we'll take tonight. Each one of them will have 3 to 5 minutes in. The first one will be a supported child's pose. So if you want to get kind of bundled up, that might be good. It's possible it'll get a little chilly in here. I'm just going to throw out some options for this, and you can choose whatever feels best for you. So we'll be coming to a wide-legged child's pose and bringing the bolster between the legs so we have something to rest on. So you can let your torso come to rest on that bolster. It's possible that you'll want the bolster to be a little closer to your body, and that's where you could use your blocks. So you could set blocks up underneath the bolsters so the bolster's kind of at an angle, and you could lean against it that way. If you have sensitive knees, you might want to have a blanket underneath your knees. You could do that. Or sometimes there can be pinching in the knees, and it helps to roll up a blanket and place it between the calves and the thighs. So that's another option. So if you have one side of your face against the bolster, I'm going to let you know when we're about halfway done with this posture so that you can flip your face to the other side. Jalopy. Okay. And then bring your knees to either side of this. And then lay your torso down across that. Do you feel like your head needs more support? You okay? You sure? Okay. So if you'd like to flip your gaze to the other side, bringing your opposite cheek to the bolster, we're about at that halfway mark. Okay, so before you move, I'll let you know where we're headed. We're going to take pretty much the same shape. We're going to flip it over. So we're going to let our spines come against the bolster next. So as you're ready, you can bring your hands under your shoulders and use your hands to gently guide your torso upright and just move slow. And I think the easiest thing to do will be to simply turn around so that your low back can come to the base of your bolster. And then we're going to let the hands guide us. So you can bring the hands to either side of your hips and just start to walk yourself down. Yeah. So I'll let you choose what makes the most sense for your legs in this posture. You might have them just splayed long in front of you, letting the feet kind of flop open to the sides. Or you might take butterfly legs, bringing the soles of your feet together, knees wide. If you are taking butterfly legs, just make sure there's not too much of a stretch there. You might, take blocks under your knees. So letting yourself settle into this shape, take a moment and just notice if your low back is talking to you. If it is, it might be helpful to lift your pelvis slightly and scooch it forward towards your feet so there can be a little more space in your low spine. Part of what sustains resilience is having the space and time to soften and relax. So even in the doing nothingness, you are contributing to your strength and resilience. So I invite you just to rest in the ease of this posture with permission to move and change it as your body requests. If you're feeling really comfortable here and you want to stay, you are welcome to do that. We have a couple of side lying postures next before we find Shavasana, our final pose. If you want to come into a side lying posture, you can gently roll over to one side and press your bolster out of the way. And then you can choose whatever side you want to start with and use your bolster to support the top leg. So your bottom leg will be kind of stretched out long. The bolster can lay against that. Yeah, you might use a block or blanket as a support for your head. We'll have a couple minutes on each side. Okay, and taking your time, we'll start to find this on the other side. You can gently roll onto your back and swap your props to the other side. And taking your time, we're going to come to our final posture for the practice, corpse pose or Shavasana. You can start to make your way back onto your back. Might feel nice to slide the bolster under your knees. The other thing to know about resilience is it's not an individual endeavor, that our resilience is in so many ways dependent on the resilience of the community. And what allows a community to be resilient is the opportunity for some to rest while others work, and then for those to work while others rest. And in our ability to hold the difficult feelings as a collective so that no one has to carry them on their own. So as you slide into this last posture and let your body find this state of rest, can you imagine yourself just being held by the floor, really cradled by it? And notice what it feels like to be held. Supported in rest. And for our last few moments of practice, you can let all control of your breath go. And just focus on softening and finding ease. You can slowly start to deepen your breath. And for right now, that can be your only movement. Just the expansion of lungs, and then that gentle contraction on the exhale. As you start to slowly wake up, I'll remind you what we practiced today. We tried to tap into the feeling of resilience inside of our body so that it could be a felt experience instead of just a cognitive experience or thought process. We found some movement and flexibility through our spinal column so that messages can flow more freely between our brain and our body. We experimented with balance, with imperfection, with play. We felt into the similarities of resilience and dignity. And then we offered ourselves time for deep rest and integration, a chance to set the weight down and be held. And as we review these things, you might take a moment to consider if any of it lands for you and if any of it might be useful to you in your life. And whatever is not useful, you can leave at the door. If it would feel good to you, you can start making some little movements, bringing some life back into your fingers and toes, feeling your head against the floor. You might rock it gently side to side. It's possible that it could feel good to grow those movements into slightly bigger movements. Maybe you stretch your arms up overhead or out wide. And then being so gentle, you can start to roll onto your side, any side. Letting yourself be held here. Take a moment to reassess your energy, noting if it may have changed. And then using your hands to help you, you can start to make your way back to an upright seat. And just finding an easy seat where there's a balance of weight and ease of breath. In concluding our practice, I bow in deep gratitude to the lineage of yoga from which all of my practices tonight have originated. I bow in deep gratitude to the native communities that have stewarded the lands that we practice on, and to each of you for showing up tonight and being in community. And with that, I invite you to bring your hands anywhere that feels meaningful to you. You might take your hands to your heart or to your belly. Maybe bring hands to prayer. Feeling for the rhythm and flow of your breath. And take 2 breaths together to seal our practice. You can exhale all the way. Take a breath in and breathe out. And once more, breath in, breath out. Thank you so much. Hope you have a good evening.